Welcome everybody to episode number 15 of the Bike Library TV. This week we have a special edition featuring this hyperbike, the Kuota Kueen-K. I'll first talk about the history of the brand, and then I'll talk about the rider for this bike. And after that we'll talk about the frame and the components on this bike, and then I'll touch on the measurement numbers for this Kuota Kueen-K. First of all, enjoy this little montage. Kuota is relatively a newer Italian brand that was founded in 2001 with distribution all over the world. From the very beginning, Kuota has been focused on carbon fiber reinforced resin for all their bike frames. In terms of triathlon, Kuota was relatively unknown until Norman Stadler won the Ironman World Championship in Kona, Hawaii. After that, the sales of Kuota has cherished. And right after Norman Stadler won again in 2006 in the Ironman World Championship, gaining 10 minutes on the bike leg and set a course record, Kuota came out with this new model called the Kueen-K, named after the highway where Stadler won victory, the famous Queen-Kahuna Highway on the big island of Hawaii. It just sounds so legendary. The rider for this Kuota Kueen-K is also a legendary figure. His name is Wolfgang Schmidt. Wolfgang raced for 3 Ironman World Championship in Kona, Hawaii, and also he raced for the Ultraman World Championship in Hawaii as well. After that, he went on to compete for triple Ironman as well as quintuple Ironman, which is almost 5 times the distance of a normal Ironman. For a person to race those long distance endurance races, it not only requires a lot of training, it probably requires north of 15 hours per week of training. It also requires a lot of strong mentality as well as willpower. Without consistent effort in training as well as a strong willpower, it's just simply impossible to qualify for those World Championship events held in Hawaii, let alone finish it. Wolfgang not only finished all those races, he was actually the first Canadian to finish the World Championship for the Ultraman events. For this Kuota Kueen-K, Wolfgang raced 3 regular Ironmans as well as a quintuple Ironman. He rode 900 kilometers on this bike continuously without any sleep in 27 hours. It's just so motivating, and every time when I heard those stories, they motivated me to finish my own training. Whenever the going gets tough during my 1.5 hour training, I thought about Wolfgang. And eventually I put my head down and just finished my training, because Wolfgang showed us that anything is possible. Now coming back to the bike, let's talk about the geometry of a triathlon bike. There are generally 2 types of geometry for a triathlon bike. The first type, it has a longer reach but a lower stack, which means that the distance from the saddle to the handlebar is usually longer, but the distance from the saddle to the center of the bottom bracket is usually low. The other type is, they call it a short and tall, which has a shorter reach, the distance from the saddle to the handlebar, but the distance from the saddle to the bottom bracket is usually tall. Manufacturers such as Cervelo, as well as Felt, and also this Kuota Kueen-K adapt into a long and low geometry, and manufacturers such as Blue and Specialized, they adapt the geometry of short and tall. When comparing with the Specialized ship with this Kuota Kueen-K, the reach for this Kuota Kueen-K is 2 centimeters longer, but the stack is 3 centimeters shorter. Also, the C-tube angle for the long and low is 78 degrees for this bike, while a C angle for the short and tall is usually less steep at 72 degrees. So a long and low bike is usually good for people who have a longer torso with shorter legs, and the other way applies to people who have a shorter torso but a slightly longer legs. The frame material used here is the high modulus 3K monocoque carbon. Carbon grades is usually split into 4 different categories: the standard, the intermediate, the high modulus, as well as the ultra high modulus. The standard high carbon has a tensile modulus of around 32 MSI, while a high modulus carbon has a tensile modulus of 42 MSI. It's generally lighter as well as stiffer. A lot of carbon frames are light and stiff, but not all of them are solid as well as stable during a fast speed. This Kuota Kueen-K is not only light and stiff, but it's also very solid, especially during a fast descent. In fact, a user reported that this Kuota Kueen-K feels like a mountain bike on speed, especially during a fast descent. That speaks a lot about the stability for this frame. The design layout for this bike is also very, very aerodynamic. If you look closer, the front brake caliper is mounted right behind the head tube. And also the rear brake caliper is mounted right underneath the chainstay for the purpose of aerodynamics. Also, the shape of the head tube as well as the seat mask, they're also arrow-shaped. They're also designed for slip through any sorts of winds. The components that Wolfgang selected on this bike are also very intricate, and every part serves for a specific purpose. The drivetrain feature on this bike originally was the SRAM Red, which is the top-of-line model for SRAM. Wolfgang replaced that with the Shimano Dura Race on the shifter, the derailleurs, as well as crank, and he noticed that it is much smoother than the SRAM Red. Speaking of the crank, depends on the characteristics of the course that he's racing. If the course is relatively flat and fast, you will tend to race a higher chainring. However, if the course is relatively hilly and has a lot of elevations, he will use a smaller chainring to make sure it is easier on his legs. It's simply a very simple strategy, but makes perfect sense. The hub bearings were also replaced by Wolfgang from the original stainless steel bearings to ceramic bearings. Ceramic bearings are much rounder with a much smoother surface area, and also they're more uniform in size, and that results in reduce of friction. Also, they're 30% harder than the stainless steel. That's more stable. And most importantly, they're more durable and they last longer. The wheels on this bike are the Zipp Aero wheels, and Wolfgang usually uses 2 sets of wheels, which is the 404 and the 808 rim height wheels. And usually as the height of the rim increase, the resistance decrease. So the one that's featured on here is the 808 rim. These wheels are not allowed in a lot of races, but the spokes on these wheels are oval and relatively flat. So once you pick up the speed, you can create almost a disc pattern. So no disc allowed, that's no problem. We have spokes that can stimulate the disc wheel. The measurement on this bike also went through a very intricate process by Wolfgang. At the beginning, Wolfgang did a bike fit for a more aggressive position. But he noticed that he gets up quite often to stretch because there's a lot of strain on his lower back. And then after he tried a more comfort setting during his bike fit, and his comfort level increased from 5 out of 10 to 8 out of 10. And he spent more time on the drop as opposed to getting up and stretch. And that is good because that results in less drag and more power outage and faster speed on the road. The size of this bike is 54 centimeters. The height of Wolfgang is 5'10" or 177 centimeters. So the stack is measured at 76 centimeters. The reach is measured at 47 centimeters. Finally, with all the lightweight components as well as the light frame, this bike weighs around 8.965 kilograms or 19.7 pounds. I really think the weights that contributed to this bike are mostly coming from the cockpit because the wheels, the frames, and all the components are pretty much the lightest in the market. And finally, let's hear the hub sound, aka the sound of music. As we're approaching to the end of this video, I'm still in awe of this beautiful Kuota Kueen-K. It was the best when it first came out, but it's being upgraded to the best of the best. Every parts and components on this bike are designed to be faster on the road. And Wolfgang also showed us that in order to achieve success in sports, it not only requires a raw talent, it also requires a lot of intelligence, brain power, as well as willpower. Therefore, in summary, when you select your next triathlon bike, make sure you select the right geometry first, and then take it to do a bike fit to make sure you feel comfortable on the bike. Also, pay special attention to the parts and components, because when you're on the road, all the factors will add up and they will make a huge difference. Thank you for watching this video, and hopefully you enjoyed it, and also don't forget to give me a thumbs up.